I wanted to talk to you about observations versus inferences. There's an activity in your packet for the ELD Remote Learning Module 3. And there's a page about observations versus inferences. And a lot of the activities in that packet require you to observe carefully because, well, that's the whole theme for the packet. That's the important thing in this packet. So, about observing and describing your observations. Okay, so this is just a quick practice on sensing versus thinking. And you've been making observations and inferences in your garden journals this year. And I've been trying to help you see the difference between those two things. And we could have practiced that more in the garden journal, but we aren't together there anymore. So that's why I chose it for a theme for this last packet. Okay, observations are things you can see, smell, taste, touch, or hear. So those are things that you use your five senses for. And in our journals, we use the symbol of drawing a little eye next to the observation section to remind us that observations are things that we directly experience, that we can see, or smell, or taste, or touch, or hear. Okay, an inference is using what you know and observe to make connections. So a lot of students knew the word educated guess. And yes, those are pretty much the same thing. It's where you're drawing conclusions. That's another term you hear in school, drawing conclusions. Inferences, drawing conclusions, educated guesses, those are all the same type of thing. You're using the information you have to have a thought about it. So we drew a picture of a brain in our garden journals to represent that. Okay, so the page in your packet asks you to read each statement and mark it O or I, depending on if it's an observation or if it's an inference. And then at the bottom of that page are the answers, but I'm just going to go through it with you, or at least some of these. You can look up the answers for the others. So the first one, this bird is probably a mourning dove. And don't forget to do those pages. There's a page about mourning doves and a page about Inca doves. And they look very similar, but they are different in some important ways to help you identify the difference. So if you were looking at a bird and you said, this bird is probably a mourning dove, is that something you can directly see or hear? Or is that a connection you've made in your mind? Okay, can I see that a bird is a mourning dove? Or do I see the shape of its tail, the shape of its head, how big it is, what type of things it's doing? Those are the things I can see. I can hear what it sounds like. It sounds different than an Inca dove. So those are things I can see and hear. But I have to put all that information together to think about whether it's a mourning dove. So that is an inference. Okay, the second one, the bird's throat is red. Okay, your throat is under your chin, right? And it's the same on a bird. So if I see that the bird's throat is red, that is something I am directly looking at and seeing, right? So that is an observation. Okay, I'm going to let you do the rest of these and try to do them yourself. Just anything where you have to put together details in your own mind to decide, then that's an inference, okay? Anything you can directly see or hear is an observation. Okay, so let's see, I don't want to show the rest of that slide right now. Let me go to the next slide. Okay, so then in your packet you have a page that is a field notebook page, and a field notebook is where it's what scientists use when they're out in the field. And when you say a scientist is out in the field, what you mean is they're out making observations and collecting data that they can use to discover things, okay, to make important connections that help us understand the world. Okay, now bird watching is a type of field work and it's a hobby. A lot of people really love to do bird watching. And it's also a way that you can participate in citizen science. If you go to eBird, I think it's ebird.org, you can get involved in some citizen science projects. And some of them I think are for kids actually on that site. But anyway, some people love bird watching and it requires careful observation and making good inferences. You have to do both of those things to be a good bird watcher. Bird watchers identify various types of birds and keep track of where they saw them and helps people understand their migrations. It's also like a collection. Okay. Now, if you look at these photos, these birds have very different colors and markings on their wings and different shapes in their heads. But there's one piece of information that these pictures do not have. There's one really important piece of information to think about when you go out to do your observations for your field notebook and you are identifying these birds. These pictures do not show you these pictures don't show you how big they are, right? Like this rock pigeon looks about the same size as this sparrow. But I'm going to tell you, rock pigeons are pretty large. They're maybe about 10 inches long, something like that. Sometimes sparrows are pretty small. They hop around and flit around very quickly. Rock pigeons fly together in large groups. They walk around on the ground to eat, but these guys just fly and flit everywhere. They jump up to the tree, down to the ground, down. They go around under the bushes and they forage and they look for food. And they're small. These guys are pretty small, maybe about 4 inches from like here to here, maybe about 4 inches. And the rock pigeon from here to here is probably about, I'd have to look it up, but maybe about 10 inches, 9 inches. So 4 inches versus 9 inches, that's a very different bird. Okay. But I mean, they look very different too, but some birds look very similar, but they are different sizes. Like the dove, the mourning dove and the Inca dove look, actually that might be an Inca dove on there, but they look very similar, but they are different sizes. The Inca dove is a lot smaller. Okay, so look very carefully when you go out to do your bird watching. Find a place with some plants or some grass or some trees and stay there for 30 minutes and you're going to write down what you see on the chart on your page. Okay, I'm going to do a different video about haiku. So if you need help with that poetry, take a look for that video, okay? Have fun with this. I want you to go outside and look around. Maybe you're going to notice things that you didn't notice before in the spring in Mesa. Have fun.